Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Rebel TA podcast. You're tuned in with Craig Fisher. Craig Fisher is the Chief Marketing Officer at Cnect. He's a talent operations and RecTech marketing leader. Craig, what's up, man?
I'm glad to be here, Brandon. It was really great to see you recently in Vegas and at RecFest. This is just a fun time of year for me. We've got the OU Texas football game happening on Saturday. So I'm very excited. It's fall, football's going on, and I'm a junkie.
Heck yeah. I'm out in Colorado, so on the Buffs bandwagon. Rough season so far, but yeah, there's something about like college football, fall hiring, conference season in full swing that just makes me feel alive.
Yeah.
I don't know about you.
Yeah, I consult through TalentNet Media to a lot of enterprise level organizations, and a lot of them have seasonal stuff, retail chains, things like that. And the fall season, back to school, all that stuff has meaning for them. That's in addition to their kids going back to school and football starting. It's buyer season, it's hiring season. There's all kinds of great things associated with it. So yeah, my favorite time of year.
100%. I worked early HR career. I was in retail, and there's something about retailers making like 42% or 42 weeks out of the year they make no money, and then 8 weeks out of the year they make all of their money, and it's
That's
just
right.
that surge exactly. Well, since we're talking about surge, I mean, like September surge job report came out. I think about the job report more of reflective of the activity that happened when the jobs were in the hiring phase, because the jobs report is reported on payroll data. So the September jobs, that's like payroll submissions. That means those are the folks that we were actually hiring in, you know, August, July, heck, maybe even June if we're talking software engineers.
Totally lagging data for sure.
I think like those trailing insights are fascinating because the world of work is actually probably moving faster in real time, and it's great to have those benchmarks, but like data only tells part of the story. So as you think about like data and recruiting, what are some of the stories that you're seeing right now and the data points that can make recruiters and consultants more impactful?
Well, so first of all, don't pay much attention to the BLS, right? I mean, this labor market data that we get from the government, it's a small statistical group that is surveyed about it in the first place. And it's very often wrong. So much like the IRS, you just trust them to tell you that you owe a certain amount of money. You can't really trust these jobs numbers very well because we saw just recently that they claimed that the 2 months previous were completely wrong and they were way off. And so this, very interesting timing with an election coming right up to set up, well, now we need to cut interest rates based on our screwing of this data completely up. And it's convenient. It's great, whatever. Uh, are we really doing the best thing for the economy? Don't know. This is why capacity planning is so difficult for employers, right? Because it's at the whim of the Fed that, things improve or don't.
Yeah, it's really interesting too as we think about capacity planning. A lot of the conversations I've been having recently when I talk with other TA leaders and recruiters, it's like, well, A, what is our headcount plan for 2025 from the organization?
Yeah.
And then B, like, what is the ethical, sustainable path forward that we will take as we build recruiting teams?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe there's just a new way of working where we don't bring on everybody W-2 through these waves and then lay them all off and then try and repair the relationships.
Yeah.
It just seems like there's got to be a better way to do this.
So I agree 100% with that. I think we're not, as talent leaders, always asking the right questions. So first and foremost, your question to the business should be, how do we make money, right? What are we doing right now to make money? What have we promised? What have we sold? How many people are we going to need to fulfill that? And how many people do we currently employ? And what's our churn rate, right? Right there's a formula for what our need is going to be. So if we know that we're actively losing X number of people a month and having to replace them, we currently employ X number of people. And you have to look at several different systems to be able to figure that out. So this is kind of a problem for talent operations in general. We don't have one good source for the answers, much like the jobs data in the US and globally.
Yeah, one of the things I like to remind people about, and I feel like I've been saying this a ton lately, is that there's no one size fits all way to hire. There's no recruiting jail. There's no hiring emergency room. Um, so what that means, if you're a practitioner, is like just think for yourself, figure it out. Like
Right.
we have a brain for a reason. Go use it. Recruiting has a low barrier to entry for a lot of folks from a career pathing perspective. Definitely want to check privilege and the opportunity that I've had to grow a career in recruiting. But like, I am not an exceptional person. I'm an unremarkable student, but I've been given opportunities. And I think when we apply those lived experiences, that's actually what makes recruiting and recruiters great as a function to be effective. Can you relate to people? But also, how do you consult internally with the business to understand the product, the financial model, and how the recruiting efforts play into the data that your attrition story is telling, that your ENPS story is telling? Sometimes ENPS and attrition aren't actually telling the same story. And you could have like a smoking net promoter score, but your attrition in a regrettable way is through the roof. So
Right.
at the end of the day, like data is just data. It's not the entire picture.
So, it's interesting you say that. I feel like uh, net promoter scores can be hacked a little bit, right? And attrition is very often based on how we're hiring, right? Are we hiring people that have intention about wanting to be here in the first place? And are we making good on our promises? So are we transparent in how we discuss what the company and the job really is up front, even on places like Glassdoor? Are we really telling people what they're getting into? And are we highlighting the things that are great about the organization, but also acknowledging the things that aren't so great in a real and transparent and organic way? So all of these things come together to help fix that attrition rate or turnover. And, net promoter scores are very good for a couple of things. So silver medalists, right? People go away, they had a okay experience, but the people who worked at your company said great things about it. So they're willing to hang around for sure. And then boomerangs, right? Did they have a good experience? Did they talk about it? And talking about it, answering even a survey question in a positive way is validation in your own mind. So when you walk away and you say, yeah, I had a good experience there, and you've said it to someone or answered a question about it somewhere. And, if you're a smart employer, you're asking the people who are leaving about their experience. And then you're asking them to, hey, push a button and go post about it on LinkedIn, even though you're leaving, right? How did we do? And talk about what was good. We would love for you to do that. Most employers are scared to do stuff like that, but man, it's a game changer if you can. And you can improve your Glassdoor scores overnight with a policy like that.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned Glassdoor. Like I didn't know people are still using Glassdoor.
Well, indeed. I mean, it's all the same thing now, right? But yeah, CHROs love to go look at what former employees and current employees say about your organization. That's one of their favorite things to do. So, I mean,
So
I pay attention to that stuff.
let's talk about that. So the state of the review ecosystem has evolved. Glassdoor acquired Fishbowl. Shout out to Lauren Appen. That's awesome. Um, there's other sites like Blind. I think all of this started from the curiosity that arose from Quora. And Quora used to be like a place for VCs to hang out and ask
That's
questions
right.
and chat. Y
Yeah.
Combinator has Bookface, their internal forum platform. So people want crowdsourced information. What do you think the role of verified identity plays when it comes to leaving reviews?
I don't think it really exists. I mean, I think that there are platforms that attempt to do it well. I think if you could blockchain reviews, that'd be fantastic,
Heck yeah.
right? Blind is fascinating, but it's blind, right? I mean, It's, what are your favorite Reddit forums?
Yeah.
You don't know who anybody really is there.
You got to take it
It's
with a grain of salt.
That's right. But and is some of that conversation seeded on purpose somehow? Are there plots and campaigns for and against certain organizations? Absolutely. This is politics. This is America. That's how it goes. So I take it all with a grain of salt. I love to put all that kind of data into a large language model and say, show me the details, show me what's interesting about this, show me the commonalities, show me where this might be fraudulent,
Yeah.
and see what we can do. Right. And I build custom GPTs for that sort of thing all the time.
One of the exercises I've done is like, if I come across a hot take or a controversial opinion, I'll like GPT, what are three like counter arguments, or what are, three theories that are informing this person's opinion, just so I can get educated.
I love that approach. And I would also ask that GPT, if I were a transparent employer, how would I respond to this person? Most people that post negative stuff just want to be heard.
Yeah.
Right. They didn't feel heard somewhere. And so they're going to go complain about it. And, if you say, hey, thanks for the review, appreciate your opinion, we'll work on it, we really, really value your feedback, that's enough most of the time.
100%. I think a lot of folks in recruiting at some point in their career will be responsible for reputation management on Glassdoor and templatizing those boilerplate emails and comments that allow people to feel heard. That's the majority of what it is. I also appreciate that you mentioned blockchain. I think like there is a really fascinating use case for AI on blockchain for how we verify people's experience. And I work with early stage founders in tech for hiring crucible individuals. This is a thesis that I've been chewing on recently, where when we think about sourcing, we make assumptions. And we're assuming that somebody worked at a certain company at a certain time in that company's product, financial, or growth story. What are the assumptions we are verifying through the interview process? Is the interview process just confirmation bias altogether, which is a question maybe we could jam on.
Yeah.
But where AI on blockchain comes into effect is it could say, okay, Craig worked at this company during this time. This is what we know about the product, growth, and financial story. Yeah. Here's how we reverse engineered Craig's impact to that company based on the limited data pool. And they can narrow it down to a certain percentage accuracy that, yes, you were the PM that shipped these features. So a recruiter goes into a call and I already know what you've done. We don't have to waste our time doing that.
Yeah. So inflection points, right? It's very important to take all these things in context. So yes, this person was only at this organization for 9 months, but it was a critical 9 months. And so maybe they're a sharpshooter, right? And that's a good thing. If you're hiring mercenaries, which you have to sometimes to get things done, that might be your person. Or it could be that person is very good at, a specific project and then gets bored and wants to move on. None of these things are necessarily bad. And if you can say, all right, how many other people like this person left the organization around a similar time, that data is readily available. Then you can say, okay, this is not an anomaly. This is not, a bad leaver. This is, probably a well-intentioned and profitable person to have on your team.
I like that idea of tracking attrition timeframes, because often when we think about these 30,000 foot view metrics like NPS or quality of hire, there are so many influential inputs that drive human behavior. And at the end of the day, we're dealing with humans. So these massive scale metrics are great sounding in the boardroom or behind a pulpit on stage at a conference. But at the end of the day, the human experience is so much more complex, particularly when we think about the motivations of workers.
Yeah.
I think those inputs are infinite, and we're probably not ever going to have like a magic number that HR or a recruiter is going to be able to fix, let alone be truly fairly accountable to.
So, I wrote a book called Hiring Humans, and I talk about that a lot. So we've got all this great automation, and we've got fantastic technology and assessments, and fine, but are we automating our way out of the potential for good relationships with our audience, right? And our audience is job seekers and employees. So yes, tools are great, but they only make a person better, right? Tools don't really make themselves better. And in theory, we've got learning, models that get better with the questions that people put into them, but that still requires a person. So, we heard this, and I've been in recruiting a long time, right? But we've heard this all along. In 2008, the iPhone came along and changed technology forever. That's going to end the need for recruiters. Nope, did not. Email, that's absolutely going to end the need for recruiters. It did not. The internet, same thing. Now AI. Well, we are seeing a depletion in talent acquisition
Yep.
since AI has occurred, but that's a coincidence. So it's just a bad economy, right? So there's no reason to run for the hills and fear the monster. Um, AI is going to get rid of us anyway. It's not really just tackling certain teams in your organization.
Yeah. And this is something that I see a ton coming out of mostly vendors where they're like, AI is not going to replace recruiters. And to me, it comes across as like pandering to your buyer persona, like say anything to pad their ego, pad their self concept
Yeah.
to sell them $1,000 worth of software. But it's a hot debate. Like if you go on LinkedIn on any given day, people are like just throwing AI is going to take recruiters' jobs or it's not over the fence back and forth in this game of
Uh-huh.
LinkedIn tennis. But ultimately, like technology and capitalism is going to be the winner. It's going to absorb our additional efficiency that AI empowers us. So
Mm-hmm.
if a team, to go back to capacity planning, is looking at hiring 10 recruiters this year, last year those recruiters worked 20 recs at a time. Now they've freed up 5 to 10 hours in their week as a result of using GPT, and they can now work 30 recs at a time. Well,
Mm-hmm.
guess what? Your capacity planning model just said now you only needed to hire 7 to 8 recruiters.
Yep.
So when we really think about AI taking jobs, it's not taking the job itself, it's allowing people to work at a higher rate. And as a result of that, there are fewer jobs in the market. So it's not like it's going to steal your job.
Mm-hmm. Well, there are fewer jobs in the market anyway, right? Hiring went down. Uh, and so the need for people goes down, right? We've seen the layoffs from all different sorts of companies over the last 2 years, and it's been consistent. So it's not just automation that's doing that, right? We invented automation in the early 1900s for the assembly line, and that required more workers, not less. Over time. So we'll see an evening out from this. But you you kind of nailed it when you said, efficiency is the key, and that's what companies are looking for. And I'm seeing in my consulting business, the employers are saying this all the time. We want to, no offense to LinkedIn, we want to get out of our LinkedIn recruiter seats. We want to be more efficient in our team structure. We want to be able to pay more personal attention to the candidates that are a good fit for our organization, right? Versus this sort of blasting and mass sourcing and easy apply effect that we currently kind of go through as the experience. Um, and and so it's a consolidation of spend as much as anything else. And we're all getting crunched because interest rates went through the roof and inflation was very high and people were buying less. And so organizations just do this. That's what
Yeah.
happens. But I see this every 10 years. This is not new. It'll happen again in 10 more years.
Yes.
So we're okay. Right. I mean, we'll come out of this. It might be a little while. Some of it'll depend on elections and things like that. But this is a natural, this is how America progresses, and this is how the world follows in that progression. So, and I don't want to be the tail wagging the dog scenario here, but I look at a lot of global statistics, and I work with Horsefly Analytics. There's a plug right there for one of my sponsors, and they're really good at this global labor market data. And I do these fun labor market minute updates on LinkedIn every week, and I'm really looking at the numbers, and I'm like, so it's very, very interesting. I can talk about the US very often, and it is the indicator for the rest of the world. So the dollar is pretty strong right now, which is great for tourists, but it's not really great for Americans because it means things cost more. So there's all kinds of things that we don't necessarily think about in our day-to-day life when we're at the gas pump saying, okay, great, fuel prices are coming down. That's fantastic. What I think is interesting about technology right now is, we're starting to measure things that aren't just skills based. And one of the companies that I'm working with currently, Cnect, when the application process is happening, the app measures intentionality, right? So how quickly do people respond, and how thorough are they? And things that, most assessments don't actually measure. And it's fairly straightforward to think about, okay, this person's responsive, so they're going to be a stickier employee. They want to be here. But to actually measure it and score it in combination with skills is something that I'm very interested in. And I think that's one of the ways we're headed.
Do they measure it by device, like mobile versus desktop?
So their scenario is a web app. So okay, there is data on that, but the experience is consistent across devices. And so, there's nothing to download, which is great. I love web apps. And if I'm ever in a situation where I'm helping to build, an app-based product, I'm always suggesting web app first. And so, yes, you do get the data and intentionality. If you have a mobile app, it's because you're trying to attract, skilled workers or hourly workers or nurses, or right, people who are on the go. And if you can apply easily to a job with more than just your Indeed profile, man, it's great because you might actually get some feedback from the employer.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Wow, there are a lot of threads we can pull in there. I know you've got an advertising and marketing background. It's funny. On my screen, I got served as you were talking an ad on LinkedIn. Start automating for free. You're much more than busy work, from Zapier.
Yeah.
Shout out to Wade.
Huge fan. Yeah, that's right.
I built last year. I was running. There's always this talk on LinkedIn. It's like, oh, what ATS is the best? And it's like, man, just pick an arrow in the quiver at this point. For like the last couple of years, I was running an ATS like through a Zapier and Airtable and Notion, and like it was working well.
There's a pretty straightforward approach there with a ATS Zap.
When it comes to that crunch of automation and who is the puppeteer at this point, like OpenAI could come out tomorrow and just like increase pricing 60% and squeeze the margin for half of the UI GPT wrappers that are out there marketed to recruiters. Yep. At the end of the day, like capitalism will win. You mentioned industrialization and efficiency of the assembly line. That actually makes me think about like, okay, well, what happened in industrialization and what happened through this movement, what happened in the 90s with NAFTA, and we're still seeing those ripple effects. I think like regulation at some point is important so that hardworking Americans can have a pathway to financial security. And I think for many people, higher education, early career work is an on-ramp to the middle class. We're seeing a diminishing middle class.
That's right.
In the US. Do you have any thoughts there around that?
I do. We're we're sort of skipping that middle phase, right? We need early careers people, and then we need experienced people, and that whole transition period of 10 years where you you earn your chops is kind of going away. So you're expected now to learn things overnight, and AI is part of the culprit here for that, because it's so good at summarizing data for you. You can take an entire employer or employee manual, right, that's that thick, and chop it up into 4 easily consumable learning modules that takes 3 hours. So the and you can, I mean, your generation and below has been doing this for a long time. It's, I need to learn how to do something, I'm going to watch a YouTube video, right? It's
Yep.
not it's not I'm going to research things forever. And I love this too, because Google searching isn't Google searching anymore. The learning experience is not what it was even 10 years ago.
Correct.
So it used to be you searched for something on Google and you get the results you're looking for. Now it's you search for something on Google and it's paid advertisement, paid advertisement, paid advertisement, video, video, video. And there's no, right, unless you're using something like Beyond Bard, which gives you sort of a synopsis in the sidebar of your browser window of what all the answers say. That's plug for one of my favorite, open AI tools, Beyond Bard. Fantastic. But I've also heard recently that Google's going to spin off Chrome and AI and lots of other things because they're being sued for, I don't know, cornering the market on search. So we're going to see some splitting up of things that might change that need for more middle management and middle tiered workers, I think. When conglomerates split up, think Southwestern Bell, AT&T, and more companies splinter off, then the need for expanded workforce actually increases. And so I'm hopeful for our future.
I appreciate that optimism. Yeah, I think it comes down to the evolution and our absorptive capacity to learn these new technologies and create new jobs and new job titles of the future.
Yeah,
Chris Long actually had a great post last week about like his prediction on future roles in TA that we'll see. And I think that aligns with the optimism of like, okay, yeah, there is some hope. We're just going to have like new job titles, and they're not going to be things like prompt engineer. They're actually like fascinating roles that include program management, regulation. There's going to be a lot more lobbyists.
That's right. TA is getting pulled into TM, right?
Yeah.
And TM didn't used to really be a thing. It was either communications or people operations, but talent management is a thing that we're seeing. It's a natural evolution for talent acquisition, right?
Yep.
So you're attracting the people that become employees, and then what? Buy? No, you should actually follow them through their life cycle and help with learning and development, and ensure a good employee experience, because it starts with the candidate experience and it should also extend to their post-employee experience. How have you communicated with them since they left? If you're a really good employer, right, the recruiter that recruited them in the first place is touching base after they left and said, how did we do? And I mean, all of these things in theory are going to extend the lifespan and life cycle of the TA teams and recruiting teams that we've seen over the last many years, right? Since 2010, basically, it's been kind of the same thing and evolving. It was just recruiting and there was no sourcing at that time, and very quickly it became sourcing and recruiting and then talent acquisition, and right.
Semantics, baby. You're talking about search, evolution of search. We've seen it with Google search results and the evolution of their search product, Vertex AI coming out, which is more vector search where you assign a number to semantic terms so that you can find like items. So like the evolution of the tools are just growing for how we query databases. And that evolution of like TA, there's always going to be a time and place for like your agency, full desk recruiter, like high volume sales and placement.
Right.
I'm a hustler, baby. I just want you to know, it ain't where I've been, but where I'm about to go. As you were saying that, I'm thinking about Jay-Z,
Yeah.
and it's like, where is the evolution of the field? Talent management is something that I've seen. I think it also just comes from recruiters' curiosity back to that like low barrier to entry. It's like, how do I evolve my skills and just be relevant to a business? Like, this is humble work, man. Like, I'm not out here like with this crazy dream at this founder level to get to $1 billion in a company. Like, I just want to help people connect to their passions, build community, build more equitable processes, and kind of streamline and smooth out some of those bumps in the employer employee relationship.
Yeah. And, or both, right? Also, I want to start something that earns $1 billion. I mean, it's an entrepreneurial mindset is something that we very often look for in recruiting and TA, just like in sales. But I think you can measure that curiosity quotient. So you know people and I know people who still don't think, oh, go ask ChatGPT that with a relevant question. It's like building a Boolean string.
Mm.
You have to know how to ask it, right? And but you have to be curious enough to care about the results.
Yeah.
And right, I think that is something that's measurable. And that sort of intentionality is what I'm constantly looking for. Can I hire people who, even if I show them the tools, are they going to care about it and care about the results and care about being more efficient and want to? My whole life is figuring out more hacks. That's
Yep.
and how can I pile on? I've got 17 jobs, Brandon. I figured out a way to manage it all.
Curiosity quotient. Have you trademarked that term? Does somebody else own that?
No, I don't know. They should. There's all these great sort of culture tools and intelligence quotient assessments, human intelligence and hierlytics and things like this have, for a while, kind of measured your quadrants. And I think that stuff is fairly accurate. I think there's too many people these days that are a unique combination that doesn't get addressed in those assessments. And I
Yep.
think with the gaming generations, so much of potential is not activated until you get into a job that stimulates you, and so it's hard to know, until you get with a leader or within an organization that inspires you, what your capacity is.
100%. We've been talking about leadership recently with a few friends, and we have this deification of technology leaders, but we don't really have a framework or model that is as prominent to leadership.
Yeah.
And often great tech leaders that are glorified in our economy are really just guised behind great transformative product, but we don't actually know in our vernacular the leadership techniques that make really strong leaders successful. Obviously, like, the world of work is dominated by men. Historically, white men love military, they love sports analogies. So those are two things that come to mind when it comes to creating a framework for leadership. But I want to see more storytelling, particularly in short form
Oh yeah.
video, about leadership, because like,
Yeah.
we see these career influencers and early career folks doing this storytelling narrative, selfie shot videos, which is awesome because
Yeah.
young people need to be inspired. And then we hear about like Steve Jobs or Zuck, and it's like, okay, great, but like, where's the actual work getting done from a leadership perspective? That's what I'm curious about. That's what I'm hungry for. That's the type of talent I am trying to find. People who are obsessed with leadership and can test and iterate and have these proven methodologies that maybe span in more inclusive ways than just traditional military or traditional sports.
So I think about coaching a lot, right? Because like your typical white guy, I love sports, but I'm actually a Native American, card carrying Cherokee. Got a Bureau of Indian Affairs card that will get me on an airplane. It's
Wow.
great, yeah. Um, but in coaching, you are either transactional or you're transformational. And the teams that have long-term success have transformational leaders. And I feel like that very often leaders get too bogged down in their quota and their project timeline and their budget, and they're way too transactional, and they're not being transformational. Because if you want to inspire people, and if you want to help people to discover their potential, right, you have to show why it's important to have that curiosity and to want to learn and to want to be better. I mean, in talent acquisition, we have to look for ways to be better business partners, right? We have to go look at our own data and say, what could we help the business do with this data that we're not currently doing? Because I can tell you, as a company leader, as a CEO, as a founder, I don't have enough people to help me look at the business from all the angles, and none of them do, right? And so if you can be one of those people who acts as a GM for your area of expertise, right? Can you GM this? If I were to have to take an extended leave, could you run this thing? And that's where we should all strive to be. I think that's I love your your active looking for those leadership capabilities and qualities.
Craig, thanks for sharing a little bit about your lineage. I grew up in upstate New York, and I am a recovering lax bro. I played lacrosse since a young age, and lacrosse was invented by the Iroquois people in upstate New York, where I'm from. And it's actually a quite spiritual game that was, part of honoring our creator. And I think being like a white dude that played that sport, just having that reverence every single time I picked up the stick and stepped on the field, it's just something that makes that sport really special to me and has been a huge part of my life. So thank you for sharing a little bit about your lineage and that interesting connection there.
I am a former lax dad.
Amazing.
My number one son was a player.
You touched on skills a little bit there. Skills-based hiring is all the rage. Everybody wants to talk about skills-based hiring. We've done this. Skills-based hiring, you alluded to it earlier. It's those personality insight or assessments that we did, the Myers-Briggs, the Enneagram, StrengthsFinders 2.0. This has always existed. We always ask software engineers to prove their skills. They go into coding assessments. We have had traditional measures like Microsoft Excel tests, but there's actually one skills-based hiring mechanism that has existed the longest. Can you guess what it is?
I can't.
Typing speed, words per minute, something that has probably existed on more resumes than any other skill, and it's largely irrelevant. So what's your take on the current state of skills-based hiring, and how does it frame into what we've already seen?
So it's funny. I had this conversation, I think it was yesterday or Wednesday, with Horsefly Analytics and a company called HireGuide. Their CEO was on a live stream with us. And HireGuide actually creates interview structure for skills-based hiring. So it's great to say we're going to do skills-based hiring, but how do you actually structure an interview around it? So there are some companies that are actually starting to figure that out. But part of that conversation was, we have to learn how to use modern tools. That's right. We talk about that curiosity question. I had to learn in school, in junior high school, how to type on a typewriter. Right. That doesn't exist anymore.
I think Matt Charney might.
Yeah. He loves that whole genre of things. My kids, no typewriter, but a lot of this, and they're very fast typers as well, because if you're going to be a proper gamer, you have to do keystrokes and not just mouse pads and things like that and controllers. So, they become very fast. We have competitions to see who's a more accurate and fast typist.
Nice.
But they don't learn things like grammar and spelling like I did. They didn't learn how to write in cursive. I mean, a little bit, but not the same, right? And so, you exchange one set of skills for another, and skills-based hiring is, I think a lot of it's all talk. It's supposed to eliminate
Yeah.
bias. I'm not sure that I believe that that's true.
Agreed.
Yeah. And so I love that it's a concept. I love that it's a sort of a marketing call out for companies to sell something with,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it's just another trend.
The best way to predict the future is to reinvent the past, not to build it. I think that's the piece that I probably saw a little bit at Conference Expo. Maybe you saw it too, is like particularly with access to LLMs, like a lot of folks are having parallel epiphanies, and you go to these things and it's a hall of mirrors. And it's like there's really only like two applications of how LLMs are being deployed. You mentioned RecFest. I think at the talk that I gave at RecFest, I broke down the recruiting funnel by operations stage and the application of LLMs and AI in each. But like the reality is we're still at the bleeding edge of this. There are folks that may be hearing about ChatGPT tomorrow. Hiring is far too vast to say this is the one size fits all approach and this is how you do it.
Right.
What was your take on what you saw at the last couple of conferences? You have all of your teeth, you're well shaved, and there's no visible injuries. So you got out of Vegas alive.
Yes. So Vegas is a unique experience for me because I've been going to, a lot of these events for a long time. I speak at a lot of these events, historically and still. And so I don't do the same things that the average attendee would do.
Yeah.
Right? So my trip is full of meetings, and I'm a firm believer that all the good things happen after the show.
Yep.
Right. And so, that's where you get to know people. And I find that regardless of what the reviews are of the crowd and the mix of vendors versus buyers, which I think is a little ridiculous, and how good is the content, or is it all vendor driven? I don't care about any of that. In fact, I care about none of that. I say at a conference, like an HR tech for sure, throw your ICP out the window and your contact list, and right, make some human connections.
Yeah.
Make a lasting impression on a few people, right, and then see them again at the next event, and realize that they took away something that you said and actually did something with it, and that you took something away that they said and actually did something with it, and then start new relationships. I mean, there's no better way. You and I could end up on a Zoom call together for some, online event or whatever, and kind of get to know each other, but we got to see each other in person and hang out. And that's a whole different thing. And so that's what I think it's all about.
Dude, same here. I think that's an art of humanity that young folks in particularly may not be experiencing the way we did coming up. And my advice is always just like, go put yourself out there. And if you want to make more friends, go be a friend to somebody else.
That's right.
And I appreciate your kindness, Craig. Like I bumped into you just like in the hallway. There's 5,000 people at HR Tech, and like they're far more important people that like you could be selling services or product to. And it's like, but you took the kindness to say like, oh, hey, what's up, dude? Yeah, I met you on the internet. And now here we are. And like, that is something that I don't take for granted. Somebody once told me, when it comes to networking, spend a third of your time with folks that are 10, 15 years ahead, a third of your time with your peers, and a third of your time giving back and passing that ladder back down. So thank you for passing that ladder and just extending kindness. I genuinely find like what you're doing in the space interesting. In this pre-show, we were talking about like connecting dots and just providing forum for people to understand that work in the recruiting space. Like, who are those kingmakers? Who are those players? What are the stories from 10, 15, 20 years ago? How do we match patterns? Mm-hmm. The skills-based hiring one is just such a perfect example because like everybody's talking about it. I love that you called out the bias. I wanted to throw this one at you since you mentioned bias when it comes to skills-based hiring. Like, say you do it perfectly. You create a competency-based interview framework. Everybody says their lines. You deploy AI transcription tools, surveillance to make sure everybody asks the right questions. But then at the last stage, it comes out that like, oh, Craig went to Berkeley and was like a diver.
Mhm.
You can't put the genie back in the bottle. So no matter how hard you mitigate and try to blind or screen these demographic or experience or prestige or privilege based identifiers, they're still going to be existing. And so much of the vendor marketing and product marketing really just punts accountability to a different part of the funnel. And that's the piece for me where I'm like, is anybody else seeing this? Like, I'm just a dude in my basement.
Yeah, no, I don't think it's going to change, right? You can't take that out of the conversation if somebody chooses to volunteer it, right? You could redact the conversation. I mean, I think Honek can do some of that.
Okay.
There's some tools that can, but in Cnect, you can turn off education and name and contact information and, other things that might bias the manager's opinion. So I think, there are tools getting there. But I think at the end of the day, you're going to have to look at someone, right, to interview them. There's never going to be Love is Blind scenario, right, where you're behind a wall and you're playing the dating game and you don't get to see the person or hear the person in their real voice. You can't get rid of that. That sort of bias. So accents and all kinds of other things affect your opinion. What I like is if I can see a video of someone talking about what they're passionate about, I might decide to interview them, even if their resume doesn't seem at all like a fit for my job. Right? I mean, especially for customer service, sales, marketing, recruiting, things like that. If they have a passion for something and they can explain that well in a short form video, and people think video is bias. I'm going to say the opposite. I have hired people because of listening to them talk about their passions on a video scenario that on paper I wouldn't have hired at all. And they don't match the profile of the rest of the people in the organization. And I can be, call it what you want, I can be intentional about being diverse if I want to be in that scenario. So I think we have to be adults about this, and I think we have to, be responsible people and say, I realize that my organization has too many white guys, and not be afraid to say that.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And one of the things you mentioned too is the way you describe that recruiting is an art and a science. Vendors are focused on the science. The conversation and marketing being had has over-indexed between vendor and user to drive revenue. And it doesn't position the candidate nearly enough in the frame.
Yeah.
And one of the pieces of technology evolution we're at right now is the dawn of AI agents on the screening side. Well, where are we going to be in 5 years when Gen Z and emerging Gen Alpha interacts differently with the internet? You and I signed away our privacy in exchange for free email.
That's what Dave. Ago. That's
yeah.
Right.
I think Dave Eggers has some sort of quote about that, the writer. And then the same goes for like LinkedIn. Like LinkedIn got all of our career data. Facebook. When did they get this? We signed away our rights to this content. At times, you have to go back and look at the moments against the cultural landscape. Like LinkedIn blew up after the Great Recession when there was record high unemployment. Of course, we were going to give away information about our career and our skills. But maybe Gen Z and Gen Alpha isn't going to have as robust a digital profile where we can then leverage tools like Boolean, semantic, vector search to identify alignment to a job description. And you have to look for more of the stuff between the black space on white paper.
So it's true, right? My youngest son's generation barely have digital profiles.
Yeah.
Right. Because it's a lot of Snapchat. But we'll have tools to figure that out as well at some point. I mean, you're just going to have to trust me on this, right? But the rest of us, we volunteered for giving up all of our information because we wanted to connect. We wanted that capability. And, the younger generation is connecting in different ways, but it's mostly through their phones. Okay. And so at some point, that information will be open web accessible somehow.
Mm.
Trust me on this. I think it's funny, people who delete their Facebook profiles and think that that has solved it, because you've already given that information. It's already
Yeah.
there. It's already being sold. And Facebook asks us everything. Who are your best friends? Who are your family members? What
Yep.
books do you like? What movies do you like? Right? All the things. It knows
And it was so
everything
cute
about
when
you.
we were
Your
in
birthday. Yeah,
college.
that's right. Hello.
Like, remember the first time somebody showed you Facebook?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I was enthralled.
It's
Fantastic.
crazy.
Yeah. I wasn't in college.
Well, yeah, I'm old enough. I remember you had to have, I was the year before I went to college, and my closest friend, yeah, he had gotten the college email, and that's what you needed to log on. And he was showing me through, and it's like, oh, this is going to be crazy.
Yeah.
And sure enough, it got crazy.
It got crazy. When LinkedIn came along, I thought that was the next evolution of things. I was really a big fan. I took it apart. I was one of the first 150,000 users, and I took it apart and said, how can we use this for SEO
Yeah.
and recruiting? And I built a lot of hacks that LinkedIn ended up asking me to train their company on how to do, which was a lot of fun. And like we were talking earlier, Jason Seiden and I ended up with a company called Ajax Workforce Marketing based around those best practices.
Jason is a mentor of mine.
He's fantastic.
Jason Leese, you cannot adopt me. But I think those stories are important for us to have in the industry. That's kind of why I started this podcast and started putting myself out there and just meeting more folks to hopefully bridge that gap. So how can people stay in touch with you and get to know the work you're doing, particularly with your conference?
Yeah, so the TalentNet Live Conference is coming up November 8th. It's at Lennox International Headquarters. We usually host at a large employer if we're not in a theater somewhere. And you can find out information about that at talenttexas.com. And all my contact information is there as well. And my book, Hiring Humans, is hiring-humans.com, and available at every online bookstore that you might want to buy it from. And I've got a new book coming out soon that is going to be called Paint Your Store. Ooh. And this is how those of us who want to brand ourselves better for opportunities can do that. And it's full of hacks and cool tricks and outside the box thinking about your career.
Amazing. Craig, thank you for joining me today. It's an absolute privilege. Can't wait to see you at the next conference.
Brandon, great to see you, my friend.